Hello and welcome back to Generic News with your host Riley Letterman and
Madison Wykes. Today is Tuesday, and you know what that means? Stories from the past. The topic this week is UFOs, specifically in the 1970s. Those big, unidentified flying objects that someone, somewhere saw. Every once in a while, some are big, some are small, some take people, some just fly away. Some are explained and some aren't, but they will continue to convince people that aliens are real.
the first one we were talking about is a case from November of 1971. This story is said to have one of the best physical traces of UFO as this case hasn't been debunked.
It takes place in Delphos, Canvos, where 16-year-old Ron Johnson and his dog, Snowball, were out taking care of the family sheep when he spotted a light in the distance hovering among some trees.
He estimated that it was about 75 feet away from him, 6 to 8 feet in diameter, and only a few feet off the ground.
Now, Ron claims that the light was so bright that it temporarily blinded him when it was ascending up into the sky.
After watching it begin to take off, he sprinted back into his house to grab his parents, who saw the UFO disappear into the sky.
After the UFO disappeared, and Ron and his parents noted a glowing substance on the ground and the trees around him. And in the morning, they saw that the UFO had left a ring on the ground that seemed to repel water, snow, or anything, such as grass or any living thing. What you are seeing on the screen are pictures of this ring from only 10 minutes after the UFO to almost 4 years after the supposed landing.
Here with us today is Ron, now 66 years old, ready to explain the ring and how it seemed extraterrestrial.
So, Ron, what did this ring truly look like?
The circle was plain to see. The soil was dried and crusted. The circle or ring was approximately 8 feet across. The center of the ring and the outside area were still muddy from rain and had grass on them. The area of the ring that was dried was about a foot across and was very light in color. It was odd because even as winter came and the snow started falling, it would not stay in this area. It seemed to expel everything, even feet down.
That is so strange. Do you truly think that there are aliens out there? And if so, what do you think that they're doing?
I don't know what they were doing. Maybe surveying? Maybe samples. Who knows? All I know is that we are not the only ones in this universe.
Thank you, Ron. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
For sure.
Hello, and welcome back from that unreal interview. This next story takes place in Ohio.
The next sighting is very strange and took place in Fostoria, Ohio, in October of 1977.
Now, this story starts with C&O Railroad sending 35 to 40 empty train cars to Columbus, Ohio. These go to a warehouse to get filled with only a few workers on duty, all using walkie-talkies to communicate with each other.
Howard J. Albert was an engineer inside of the train cab when he suddenly saw what seemed to be a shooting star at 3:20 in the morning. However, this shooting star curved down and came between him and the street that ran next to the railroad. This is when Howard decided to flash the train lights at the UFO and claims that the UFO responded with the same action. Howard does it again, but twice, very quickly, and once again claims that the UFO responded before finally flying away.
Now, I know that this story is short, but I mean, come on, the UFO flashes its lights back? Bizarre. This third sighting also includes a train in October, only a couple of years earlier in 1973. At 6:50 in the morning, two men on an L&N train saw a bright but distant light in the sky. The light was said to be pulsing when it began moving towards Evansville near Mount Vernon, and suddenly just disappeared. That's when they said the train began following them, and they were not responding to anything on the radio from the train car.
At this time, the light board, which signals traffic on the tracks, had a red light, which is essentially telling them that there is traffic on the track. In response to this and no answer on the radio, the conductors called the Howell Roundhouse and asked if there was a train behind them to confirm. However, the response was not what they would have wished, and there was no train behind them. The conductor then decided to get out, and this seemingly scared the UFO off and didn't bother the train or its crew again.
Now, this last story is what seems to have started all those classic UFO abducting a cow you see in all those weird cartoons. It takes place in Houston, Texas in May of 1973. Judy Doherty, her daughter Cindy, her mother and sister-in-law were all on their way back from Texas City where they were playing bingo when they had to drop off the sister-in-law in Alto Loma when they saw a strange light.
Now, why do all these start with some weird, strange light that they see? Anyways, Judy dropped her sister-in-law off, and the last three ladies traveled back to their own homes. Everything seems dandy, and they forgot about that strange light. Until Judy starts experiencing severe anxiety and headaches.
She goes to doctor after doctor, and they all essentially say nothing that would actually help. So Judy has no choice but to turn to other ways to help, and she chose hypnosis. During her sessions is when all those memories started to come back of being abducted.
It's said that she first saw this light take a cow and transport it into the ship before grabbing her and the other three women with her. Then she claims to have seen the cow get mutilated with the eyes, limbs, and other body parts getting removed and tested. She then sees her daughter on some sort of lab table.
She said that these creatures were, quote, were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, gray creatures with large egg-shaped heads.
Here's Judy now, 81 years old, ready to share some of the story herself.
So, Judy, tell me what you saw that night.
We were all sitting in the car. I was all
Okay.
still in the car. I can't.
It's all good. You don't have to read it word for word,
Oh,
just as long as you got the basics.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Anyways,
So, Judy, tell me what you saw that night.
we were all still in the car. My sister-in-law was about to get out of the car when we saw this pale yellow light coming from above. Then all of a sudden, we see this little calf almost being sucked up into this giant ship. We all got out of the car to see what was going on, and next thing I know, we were getting sucked up too.
I just couldn't imagine. What did you even see when you were up there?
Well, I don't remember all of it, but I remember seeing this poor calf being pulled apart, and then I remember turning away just because I couldn't look. That's when I saw my daughter with these creatures surrounding her. Then one turned to me and made me swallow this substance. That's where I think the migraines started, and how so many of us forgot what happened.
That's terrible. Thank you so much for the interview, Judy.
Thank you for listening to my story.
That is quite the story. Anyways, guys, that concludes this Tuesday's Special Stories from the Past. A huge thank you to Ron and Judy specifically. They did not have to come out here to interview. And a huge thank you to all of you to continuing watching Generic News.
See you next week.
Bye.